courtroom doors swung open with a dramatic thud that echoed through the marble halls of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. Jasmine Crockett, the fierce Texas congresswoman known for her razor-sharp comebacks, walked in wearing a power-red suit that commanded attention. Her legal team flanked her like an army ready for battle. But it was Tucker Carlson's face that told the real story. The moment he saw the stack of evidence boxes being wheeled in, his trademark smirk vanished completely. Just 48 hours earlier, Carlson had laughed off the lawsuit on his new streaming show, calling it another desperate attempt by the radical left to silence conservative voices. He'd promised his viewers he would expose Crockett's frivolous lawsuit for what it really is. But now, sitting in that courtroom, his face had gone pale. The confident media personality who'd spent years attacking politicians on air suddenly looked like a deer caught in headlights. This wasn't just another defamation case. This was a $150 million zero-cents reckoning that would shake the foundations of political media. And before we dive into how Jasmine Crockett brought one of conservative media's biggest names to his knees, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because what happens next will absolutely blow your mind. Comment below where you're watching from. This story is making waves from coast to coast. Jasmine Crockett wasn't your typical politician. At 42, the Dallas native had built her reputation as a civil rights attorney before entering Congress. She'd spent years fighting for the underdog in courtrooms across Texas, taking on cases others wouldn't touch. Her colleagues called her the prosecutor because of her ability to dismantle opponents with surgical precision during congressional hearings. She didn't just speak, she performed verbal autopsies on her opponents' arguments. Growing up in St. Louis before moving to Texas, Crockett had learned early that you had to fight twice as hard to be heard. Her grandmother, who raised her after her parents divorced, always told her, "Baby, they're going to come for you because you speak truth. When they do, you better have your receipts ready." Those words had shaped her entire approach to politics. She kept meticulous records of everything, every email, every transcript, every piece of evidence that might matter someday. Tucker Carlson, on the other hand, represented everything Crockett fought against. The 54-year-old media titan had built an empire on controversy. After his departure from Fox News, he'd launched his own media platform, reaching millions of devoted followers who hung on his every word. His net worth was estimated at over $30 million, 0 cents, and he'd turned political commentary into a blood sport. He didn't just report news, he created narratives that shaped how millions of Americans saw their country. But Carlson had made a fatal mistake. 3 months ago, he'd dedicated an entire week of shows to what he called the Crockett Corruption Chronicles. He'd accused her of everything from taking bribes to having connections with foreign agents. He'd doctored videos, taken quotes out of context, and even hired actors to portray fake witnesses. It was character assassination at its most vicious, designed to destroy not just her political career but her entire life. This lawsuit wasn't just about money, though $150 million, 0 cents, would certainly get anyone's attention. This was about the future of political discourse in America. Could media personalities say anything they wanted about elected officials without consequences? Where was the line between free speech and deliberate defamation? For Crockett, this was personal. The attacks hadn't just affected her. They'd targeted her family. Her teenage daughter had been harassed at school. Her elderly mother had received death threats. Her staff had been doxxed. Their personal information spread across the dark corners of the internet. One young staffer had quit after someone showed up at her apartment building with a camera, demanding she tell the truth about her corrupt boss. For Carlson, losing this case wouldn't just mean financial ruin. His entire media empire was built on the premise that he could say whatever he wanted without consequences. His followers believed him because he positioned himself as the brave truth-teller fighting against the establishment. If he lost this case, if it was proven in court that he had knowingly lied and fabricated evidence, his credibility would be destroyed forever. The legal teams assembled for this battle were equally impressive. Crockett had hired the law firm of Patterson and Associates, the same team that had won record defamation settlements against major media companies. Led by Sarah Patterson, a Harvard law graduate with a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in court, they'd spent months building an airtight case. Carlson's team was headed by Mitchell Crawford, a conservative legal superstar who'd successfully defended dozens of high-profile media personalities. Crawford had never lost a defamation case in his 30-year career. He'd walked into the courthouse that morning telling reporters, "This is a frivolous lawsuit that attacks the very foundation of free speech in America. We'll have it dismissed within the hour." But Crawford hadn't seen what was in those evidence boxes yet. The courtroom was packed to capacity. Every major news outlet had sent their best reporters. The gallery was filled with political figures from both parties, all wanting to witness what many were calling the trial of the decade. Judge Martha Chen, a no-nonsense jurist with 20 years on the bench, commanded absolute silence with just a look. Sarah Patterson stood up for her opening statement, her voice clear and confident. "Your Honor, we will prove that Mr. Carlson didn't just express opinions about my client. He fabricated evidence. He hired actors to portray fake witnesses. He doctored videos and documents. He created an elaborate fiction designed to destroy Congresswoman Crockett's reputation, and he did it knowing that every word was a lie." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Crawford jumped up immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. These are inflammatory accusations without any foundation." "You'll have your turn, Mr. Crawford," Judge Chen said coldly. "Ms. Patterson, continue." Patterson walked over to the evidence table and picked up a folder. "We have emails, Your Honor. Internal emails from Mr. Carlson's production team discussing how to make the Crockett story more believable. We have invoices showing payments to actors who portrayed the supposed witnesses. We have the original, undoctored videos that Mr. Carlson's team manipulated." Tucker Carlson's face had gone from pale to bright red. He leaned over to whisper urgently to Crawford, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Patterson pulled out her laptop and connected it to the courtroom's display system. "Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit A, an email from Mr. Carlson himself to his senior producer." The email appeared on the screen, and the courtroom went dead silent. From Tucker Carlson to Mark Stevens. Subject: Crockett segment. Date: September 3, 2024. Mark: "I know the Crockett stuff is thin, but our audience needs red meat. Can your video guys work their magic on that committee footage? We need her looking guilty of something. Also, that actor you found to play the whistleblower. Make sure he's prepped properly. We can't have another situation like the Baltimore story. This needs to land hard. Crockett's been a thorn in our side for too long. Time to take her down a few pegs. TC." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Several reporters were already typing furiously on their phones, sending updates to their newsrooms. Carlson's face had gone white again, his jaw clenched tight. Crawford stood up, his voice less confident than before. "Your Honor, we question the authenticity of this email. This could easily be fabricated." Patterson smiled coldly. "We obtained these emails through legal discovery, Mr. Crawford. Your client's own email servers. We have the complete metadata chain proving their authenticity. We also have sworn affidavits from 3 former employees of Mr. Carlson's production company confirming these practices." She clicked to the next slide. Exhibit B, an invoice from Stellar Casting Agency for, and I quote, 3 background actors for political reenactment scenes, Tucker Carlson Productions. The invoice showed a payment of $5,000, 0 cents to 3 actors with their headshots attached. One of them looked exactly like the whistleblower who had appeared in shadow on Carlson's show, claiming to have evidence of Crockett taking bribes. "Now, Your Honor," Patterson continued, her voice gaining momentum, "I'd like to show the court a side-by-side comparison of the video Mr. Carlson aired and the original footage. 2 videos played simultaneously on the screen. On the left was the segment from Carlson's show, showing Crockett at a committee hearing appearing to accept an envelope from someone off camera, with Carlson's voiceover saying, 'Watch as Crockett takes what appears to be a payoff right in the middle of a congressional hearing.' On the right was the unedited footage, clearly showing Crockett accepting a tissue from an aide because she had been sneezing due to allergies. The suspicious envelope was a pack of tissues." The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen had to bang her gavel multiple times to restore order. "Silence! I will clear this courtroom if there's another outburst!" Carlson was now slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. Crawford was frantically flipping through papers, clearly looking for something, anything, to counter this devastating evidence. Patterson wasn't done. "Your Honor, we have one of the actors here today who's willing to testify." The courtroom doors opened and a young man in his 20s walked in nervously. He was sworn in and took the witness stand. "State your name for the record," Patterson said. Jeremy Morrison. Mr. Morrison, do you recognize this image? She showed him a screenshot from Carlson's show. The silhouetted whistleblower. Yes, that's me. Can you tell the court how you came to appear on Mr. Carlson's show? Morrison shifted uncomfortably. I'm an actor. I got a call from my agency about a job. They said it was for a political reenactment. I was told to memorize a script about seeing Congresswoman Crockett taking money from lobbyists. They paid me $2,000, 0 cents for 1 day's work. Did you ever actually witness Congresswoman Crockett taking money from anyone? No, ma'am. I'd never even heard of her before the job. Everything I said on that show was from the script they gave me. Do you have a copy of that script? Yes, ma'am. Morrison pulled out his phone. I kept a photo of it because something felt wrong about the whole thing. The script appeared on the courtroom screen. It was detailed, with specific allegations against Crockett, all fabricated. At the bottom was a handwritten note. Make it believable. Emotional. You're disgusted by the corruption you've witnessed. E. Crawford stood up weakly. Your Honor, we request a recess. Denied, Judge Chen said sharply. Ms. Patterson, continue. Patterson pulled out another folder. Your Honor, we've traced the financial impact of Mr. Carlson's defamatory campaign. In the week following his shows about Congresswoman Crockett, she received over 10,000 death threats. Her campaign had to hire additional security at a cost of $75,000, 0 cents. 3 major donors withdrew their support, citing the allegations. Her daughter had to change schools due to harassment. She showed receipts, police reports, and security company invoices. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously documented. Furthermore, Patterson continued, Mr. Carlson's show saw a 40% increase in viewership during the week he attacked my client. His streaming platform gained 50,000 new paid subscribers. He directly profited from destroying my client's reputation with lies he knew were false. Against Crawford's desperate advice, Tucker Carlson decided to take the stand himself. He walked up slowly, his usual confidence completely gone. After being sworn in, he sat down, gripping the edges of the witness box. Patterson approached him like a shark circling prey. Mr. Carlson, do you recognize this email? She showed him the red meat email again. I write a lot of emails, Carlson stammered. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Carlson. Did you write this email? Carlson looked at Crawford, who could only shrug helplessly. Yes. So you admit you knew the allegations against Congresswoman Crockett were, in your words, thin? That's not. I meant the initial research was thin. We do additional research, Mr. Carlson. Can you show us any evidence, real evidence, that Congresswoman Crockett took bribes? Carlson was sweating now. We had sources. You mean the actors you hired? No, we had real sources who wished to remain anonymous. Can you name one? Just one real source. Carlson opened his mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was only about 10 seconds. I'll take that as a no, Patterson said. Mr. Carlson, how much money did your platform make during the week you ran the Crockett stories? I don't know the exact figures. Patterson pulled out a financial statement. According to your own company's records, you made $2, 0 cents. $3 million that week from new subscriptions and advertising. Is that accurate? Carlson's voice was barely a whisper. It sounds about right. Mr. Carlson, I want to show you one more piece of evidence. Patterson pulled out her final folder. This is a recording from your production meeting the day before you aired the first Crockett segment. She played an audio recording. Carlson's voice was clear. Look, I don't care if it's true or not. Crockett's been making us look bad with her committee performances. She's too smart, too quick. We need to muddy the waters, make people question her integrity. Even if we have to retract later, the damage will be done. That's what matters. The courtroom was completely silent. Even Crawford had stopped taking notes, his pen frozen in midair. Judge Chen leaned forward. Mr. Carlson, did you just admit on that recording that you didn't care whether your allegations were true? Carlson looked like he was about to be sick. That was taken out of context. What context, Mr. Carlson? Patterson pressed. What context makes it acceptable to knowingly broadcast lies about a sitting member of Congress? Carlson had no answer. When Jasmine Crockett took the stand, the entire courtroom seemed to lean forward. She sat with perfect posture, her hands folded calmly in her lap, but her eyes burned with controlled fury. "Congresswoman Crockett," Patterson began gently, "can you tell the court how Mr. Carlson's broadcasts affected your life?" Crockett took a deep breath. "My daughter, who's 16, came home from school crying because kids were calling me a criminal. They were sharing clips from Carlson's show. She asked me, 'Mom, why does that man hate you so much? What did you do to him?' Her voice cracked slightly, but she continued, 'My mother, who's 78 and has heart problems, had to be hospitalized after receiving death threats at her home. Someone had posted her address online after Carlson's show, saying she raised a corrupt daughter. The stress caused her to have a minor heart attack.'" She looked directly at Carlson. "I've been in politics long enough to know that criticism comes with the territory. I can handle political attacks. But this wasn't politics. This was a deliberate attempt to destroy my life, my family's life, based on complete fabrications. Mr. Carlson didn't just lie about me. He created an entire alternate reality where I was a criminal, and he broadcast it to millions of people who trusted him." "What do you want from this lawsuit?" Patterson asked. "I want accountability," Crockett said firmly. "I want it proven in court that Mr. Carlson lied, that he knew he was lying, and that there are consequences for using your platform to destroy people with falsehoods. The money isn't for me. If I win, every penny will go to organizations that fight disinformation and support victims of online harassment." After 3 days of testimony and evidence, the jury retired to deliberate. They were back in just 4 hours, remarkably fast for such a complex case. The foreman stood up. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett." The courtroom erupted. Crockett's team embraced her as she wiped tears from her eyes. Carlson sat frozen, staring at the table. "Furthermore," the foreman continued, "we award damages in the amount of $150 million, 0 cents. $50 million, 0 cents in compensatory damages, and $100 million, 0 cents in punitive damages." Judge Chen banged her gavel. "The jury has spoken. Carlson, you are hereby ordered to pay $150 million, 0 cents to Congresswoman Crockett. Additionally, this court orders you to issue a full public retraction and apology on all your platforms within 48 hours. Within minutes of the verdict, Crockett Wins was trending worldwide on every social media platform. The video of Carlson's face when the verdict was read, his jaw dropping, his eyes widening in disbelief, became an instant meme. Someone created a TikTok with his expression set to the sound of a cash register, and it got 10 million views in an hour. Major news networks interrupted their regular programming to cover the verdict. CNN's Anderson Cooper called it a watershed moment for accountability in media. Even Fox News, Carlson's former employer, covered the story, with one anchor noting, "This verdict sends a clear message that there are limits to what media personalities can say without consequences." Carlson stumbled out of the courthouse, surrounded by his legal team trying to shield him from the dozens of cameras and reporters shouting questions. "Tucker! Tucker! Will you appeal? How do you respond to the verdict? Will you actually pay the $150 million? 0 cents. He said nothing, keeping his head down as he got into a black SUV and sped away. Meanwhile, Crockett held an impromptu press conference on the courthouse steps. "This isn't about me," she said, her voice strong and clear. "This is about everyone who's been victimized by lies masquerading as news. Today we proved that truth still matters in America, that you can't just make up stories to destroy people you disagree with politically." A reporter asked, "What's your message to Tucker Carlson?" Crockett paused, choosing her words carefully. "I hope Mr. Carlson uses this as an opportunity for reflection. He has a powerful voice and millions of followers. He could use that platform to inform and elevate public discourse. Instead, he chose to weaponize it with lies. I hope he makes better choices going forward." Within hours of the verdict, Tucker Carlson's media empire began to crumble. His streaming platform lost 200,000 subscribers in a single day. People who felt betrayed upon learning they'd been fed deliberate lies. Major advertisers pulled their support, with one CEO stating, "We cannot in good conscience associate our brand with someone who has been proven in court to fabricate news." Financial analysts estimated that Carlson's net worth, previously around $30 million, 0 cents, would be completely wiped out by the judgment. He would likely have to sell his homes, his production company, and liquidate most of his assets. There were rumors he might have to declare bankruptcy. His book publisher announced they were canceling his upcoming book deal. Speaking engagements were canceled. Even some of his most ardent supporters in conservative media began distancing themselves. One prominent conservative commentator said, "Look, we all push boundaries in opinion media, but manufacturing evidence? Hiring actors? That crosses every ethical line we have." Legal experts immediately began analyzing the case's implications. Professor Jennifer Martinez from Yale Law School called it the most significant defamation verdict against a media figure in modern history. What makes this case unique, she explained on PBS NewsHour, is the clear evidence of actual malice, not just reckless disregard for the truth, but active fabrication of evidence. This sets a new precedent that could reshape how political commentary is conducted. Within days, 3 other politicians announced they were considering similar lawsuits against media personalities who had made false allegations against them. Several media companies issued new editorial guidelines explicitly prohibiting the use of actors to portray witnesses or the manipulation of video evidence. The Columbia Journalism Review published a scathing analysis titled "The Carlson Verdict: A Reckoning for Propaganda Disguised as News." They wrote, "This case draws a clear line between protected opinion and unprotected fabrication. You can say you think a politician is corrupt. You cannot hire actors to pretend they witnessed corruption that never happened." The verdict sent shockwaves through the political world. Democrats hailed it as a victory against what they called the right-wing disinformation machine. Republicans were split. Some defended Carlson and claimed the verdict was an attack on conservative media, while others distanced themselves, acknowledging that fabricating evidence was indefensible. Senator John Mitchell, a Republican from Texas, said, "I've been critical of Congresswoman Crockett's policies and I'll continue to be. But making up lies about your political opponents is not conservatism. It's corruption of our democratic discourse." Crockett's standing in Congress was immediately elevated. Colleagues who had previously seen her as just another freshman representative now viewed her as someone who had taken on one of the most powerful voices in media and won. She received a standing ovation when she returned to the House floor. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, despite being from the opposite party, shook her hand and said, "That took courage, Congresswoman, real courage." 48 hours after the verdict, Tucker Carlson appeared on his streaming platform to deliver the court-ordered retraction. He looked haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. Reading from a prepared statement, his voice monotone, he said, "I want to address the recent court verdict regarding Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The court has found that I made false statements about Congresswoman Crockett. I retract all allegations I made about her taking bribes or engaging in any form of corruption. These allegations were without basis in fact. I apologize to Congresswoman Crockett and her family for any harm my statements may have caused." The video was painful to watch. This was a man who had built his career on never apologizing, never backing down, being forced to admit he had lied. The comment section on the video was brutal, with even his supporters expressing disappointment and anger. One longtime viewer wrote, "I defended you for years, Tucker. I told people you were just telling hard truths. To find out you were literally making things up, I feel like such a fool." True to her word, Crockett announced that the $150 million 0 cents judgment would be used to establish the Truth in Media Foundation. The foundation would provide legal support to victims of defamation, fund media literacy programs in schools, and offer scholarships to journalism students committed to ethical reporting. At the press conference announcing the foundation, Crockett said, "This money came from lies, but we're going to use it to promote truth. We're going to make sure that the next generation of journalists understands that facts matter, that truth matters, and that there are consequences for abandoning those principles." She announced that the first scholarship recipients would be 10 students from low-income families pursuing journalism degrees. One of them, Maria Santos from Houston, said tearfully, "Congressman Crockett showed us that you can fight back against lies and win. She's my hero." 6 months after the verdict, media historians were already calling it a turning point in American political discourse. Several states introduced legislation strengthening defamation protections for public figures when deliberate fabrication could be proven. Media companies instituted new fact-checking protocols. The term "getting crocketed" entered the political lexicon, meaning to be thoroughly destroyed in court for lying. Political commentators became noticeably more careful about distinguishing between opinion and fact, often adding disclaimers like "this is my opinion based on available information," rather than stating allegations as fact. Cable news networks instituted new policies requiring multiple source verification for any serious allegations against public figures. One network executive said, "Off the record, nobody wants to be the next Carlson. The liability is just too high." A year later, Tucker Carlson attempted to come back with a new podcast called Unfiltered Truth. The irony of the name was not lost on anyone. His first episode drew significant attention, but not the kind he wanted. The comment sections were flooded with reminders of the Crockett case. Sponsors were scarce, and those who did advertise faced immediate boycott campaigns. In the podcast, a humbled Carlson said, "I made mistakes. I let my desire for ratings override my judgment. I've learned from that experience, but the damage was done." His audience was a fraction of what it once was. The man who had once commanded the attention of millions was now struggling to get 50,000 downloads per episode. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's political star continued to rise. She was re-elected with 75% of the vote, the highest margin in her district's history. There was talk of her running for Senate, maybe even higher office. She had become a symbol of standing up to bullies and winning. Netflix announced they were producing a documentary about the case called Truth on Trial, the Crockett v. Carlson case. It would feature never-before-seen footage from the trial, interviews with jurors, and a deep dive into how Carlson's fabrications were uncovered. The trailer alone got 20 million views in its first week. One juror, speaking anonymously, said in the preview, "When we saw that email where he said he didn't care if it was true, that was it. We knew he was guilty. It wasn't even a hard decision." Law schools across the country added Crockett v. Carlson to their curriculum as a landmark case in defamation law. Harvard Law School created an entire seminar around it called Truth, Lies, and Legal Consequences in the Digital Age. Professor Sarah Williams, who taught the seminar, said, "This case established that in the era of digital media, where lies can spread to millions in seconds, the courts will hold people accountable for deliberate fabrication. It's not about limiting free speech. It's about preventing weaponized lies." The case was cited in dozens of subsequent lawsuits. It became the standard by which fabrication in media was judged. Legal textbooks were updated to include it as a defining case of the 21st century. 5 years after the verdict, Jasmine Crockett was sworn in as a United States Senator from Texas, the first black woman to hold that position from the state. In her victory speech, she said, "5 years ago, someone tried to destroy me with lies, but truth has a way of winning in the end." That's the lesson I want every young person watching to remember. No matter how powerful the liar, truth backed by courage will prevail. Tucker Carlson, meanwhile, was living a quiet life in rural Montana. His media empire was gone, his fortune depleted. He occasionally wrote op-eds for small conservative websites, but his influence was a shadow of what it once was. In a rare interview with a local paper, he reflected, "I let ambition and ratings corrupt my judgment. I became everything I claimed to stand against, a spreader of fake news. It's a mistake I'll regret for the rest of my life." The case marked a broader cultural shift in how Americans consumed political media. Fact-checking became not just common but expected. Audiences became more sophisticated, demanding sources and evidence rather than accepting claims at face value. Media literacy courses, many funded by the Truth in Media Foundation, reached over 10 million students. A generation was growing up understanding the difference between opinion and fact, between legitimate criticism and fabricated attacks. One high school student in a media literacy class said, "The Crockett case taught us that you can't just believe everything you see on TV or online. You have to ask, where's the evidence? Who's the source? Could this be fake?" The case of Jasmine Crockett versus Tucker Carlson became more than just a legal battle. It became a defining moment in American media history. It proved that even in an era of alternative facts and echo chambers, truth still mattered. That there were still consequences for those who weaponized lies for profit and political gain. For Crockett, it was vindication not just for herself, but for everyone who had been victimized by deliberate disinformation. She showed that with courage, good legal representation, and solid evidence, David could still beat Goliath. For Carlson, it was a cautionary tale about the dangers of believing you're above accountability. His fall from grace was swift and complete, a reminder that no platform is big enough to protect you from the consequences of deliberate deception. The $150 million zero-cents verdict wasn't just about money. It was about sending a message that reverberated through every newsroom, every podcast studio, and every social media platform in America. You can have your opinions, you can criticize public figures, but you cannot fabricate evidence to destroy them. As we look at the media landscape today, 5 years after the verdict, it's clearer but not perfect. There are still those who spread disinformation, but they're more careful, more likely to face consequences. The Crockett case didn't eliminate lies in media, but it made them more expensive, literally and figuratively. The Truth in Media Foundation has trained over 50,000 young journalists in ethical reporting. Its legal defense fund has helped 200 victims of defamation get justice. The ripple effects of one woman's courage to stand up to a media giant continue to spread. In her Senate office, Jasmine Crockett keeps a framed photo from the day of the verdict. It shows her walking out of the courthouse, head held high, surrounded by her legal team and family. Below it is a simple inscription: "Truth wins." And that, perhaps, is the most important lesson of all. In a democracy, truth may sometimes be delayed, sometimes be obscured, but given the chance to be heard in a fair forum, truth wins. It's a lesson Tucker Carlson learned the hard way, and one that Jasmine Crockett proved with courage, determination, and $150 million, 0 cents worth of consequences. If you found this story as incredible as we did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Ring the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the political dramas that shape our nation. And comment below, what do you think was the most shocking revelation from this case? Was justice truly served? We read every comment and want to hear your thoughts on this landmark case that changed American media forever. Remember, in an era of information warfare, staying informed isn't just important, it's essential. Keep watching, keep questioning, and keep demanding truth from those in power. Until next time, this is your source for the political stories that matter most.